My name is Danielle Morgan. I am 32 years old and I live in the northern suburbs of Denver, Colorado. For almost 10 years, I gave all of my time and energy to our family's business, Morgan and Company. Construction. I never thought of doing anything else. Since I was little, I believed I would take over the company my dad worked so hard to build. I grew up hearing the sound of drills and smelling the dust from construction work on my dad's clothes. By the time I was 8, I knew the difference between a blueprint and a 3D drawing. At 12, I spent my whole summer answering phone calls and organizing papers at the office. Whenever a client said something nice about me, my dad would smile and pat my shoulder. He used to say, "This girl knows how to run a business." He did not say a lot of sweet things, but his look always told me one thing: one day this company will be yours. That promise stayed in my heart and became my reason for everything. While other kids dreamed of becoming pilots or fashion designers, I had only one dream. I wanted Morgan and Company to be the best construction company in all of Colorado. I got job offers from big companies in Seattle, Houston, and Atlanta, but I said no to all of them. I studied construction management, graduated with honors, and went straight to work the very next Monday. No break, no celebration. I jumped right in. I was always the first one to open the office in the cold winter mornings and the last one to leave late at night. During the busy seasons, I slept on the office couch with a notebook as my pillow. I remembered every client's name, their pet's name, their wedding dates, and even their favorite kitchen tiles. I updated all of our old paper records to digital files and suggested new software to help us finish projects faster. Because of these changes, we made almost double the money in just 4 years. Even though my name was not on the company sign, almost everything inside the company had my touch. As for my personal life, I hardly had one. I had 2 serious relationships and both ended for the same reason. They told me, "You love your work more than me." Maybe they were right. But I thought I was doing the right thing. I was not chasing awards. I was building the future of the company. I barely stayed in my apartment except to shower and change. My old friends stopped calling me because I always said I was busy. I even missed my best friend's wedding to close a big deal worth nearly $1 million. But I never regretted it. I believed that every sacrifice was helping me get closer to what I deserved. No one forced me to work late nights or skip family holidays. I did it because I believed that one day my dad would give me the keys to the company. I believed that he trusted me. I believed I was the chosen one. But I forgot one important thing. In my family, trust is not promised. I remember the day everything changed. It was a cloudy Tuesday in April last year. I had just finished a budget meeting when my phone rang. It was Mom. She never calls during work, so I answered. She said, "Danielle, your sister is home. Can you come to dinner tonight? The whole family should be together." I froze. My sister, Savannah Morgan, was 34 years old and always the favorite. She had dropped out of school to follow her dream of photography. She had lived in so many places: Prague, Lisbon, Bali, and New York. She never stayed in one place and missed every Thanksgiving, Christmas, and even my birthdays for years. And now, suddenly, she was back. That night, I sat across from Savannah at the same kitchen table we had eaten at as kids. Mom made my favorite meal, honey-glazed chicken, but said it was for both her daughters. Savannah looked perfect in a white linen dress. Her hair was in a messy bun, and she smiled like nothing had ever gone wrong in her life. "You're doing amazing, Danny," she said. "Dad always talks about how smart you are, how clients love you. You are the one keeping things going." I smiled and said thank you. I told her that every company needs someone to keep the wheels turning. Then she said, "Sure, but I think the company needs something more. A little spark. A bit of creative magic." She smiled like she already had a plan. I did not understand what she meant until the next Monday. Dad called me into a small meeting room next to his office. Savannah was already sitting there, smiling with a cup of coffee like she belonged there. "Danielle," he said, "I want to tell you about Savannah's new role. Starting today, she will be our brand creative director. She will help give the company a fresh new look, from our website to how we talk to new clients. The market is changing, and I think we need to change too. I looked at Savannah. She kept smiling, calm, and confident. But the way she sipped her coffee felt cold. I stayed quiet. I just nodded and said, "That's fine. I will tell the design team to work with her." But deep inside, something broke. For 8 years, I worked so hard to keep this company running. I fixed problems, improved systems, and helped us survive the pandemic. No one ever made a big announcement for me. I was given work, and I did it. No cheers, no attention. Within 1 month, Savannah became the favorite in every meeting. All the presentations started using her new designs. She changed the logo, made the fonts playful, and used brighter colors. The same dad who once refused to update our email address now praised her in front of everyone. Savannah brought new life to the company, he said. He even called us the perfect team, like we were sharing the role. But that just made it feel like my role was shrinking. Savannah came to work at 9:30, left by 4, and took long lunch breaks. She even posted photos of our office on Instagram with captions like "creative flow" and "family business." I stayed silent because, honestly, people liked her ideas. 2 of our recent home model presentations got great feedback thanks to her designs. But every time I saw Dad turn to her and ask, "Savannah, what do you think?" it hurt. I was still doing all the hard work, finishing reports, checking contracts, solving staff problems. But Dad was looking more and more toward the new and shiny ideas. I started to feel like the loyal employee who had done her time, while Savannah was the exciting new future. I did not say anything. I kept doing my job. But at night, when I got home, I started going through old files, past reports, and old emails. I did not know what I was searching for. But something inside me felt unsure. I was starting to doubt not just Savannah, but every promise ever made in the Morgan house. One day, I stayed longer in Dad's office. I do not know why. Maybe I had a feeling. Maybe it was the smell of old paper or the sound of the copier outside. Or maybe it was the strange way Dad and Savannah looked at each other that morning when I asked about the Everpine townhouse contract. I had led that project from the beginning. Dad said, "I already sent the original contract to legal. You can check the copy in the system." But there was no copy in the system. And I knew my dad's #1 rule: never send a document without keeping a photocopy. That was a rule he had taught me when I was just starting out. So I went to the basement where we kept the old files. Only Eleanor, our longtime assistant, and I knew which drawers got stuck or which boxes had wrong labels. I searched through drawer after drawer. I was not just looking for that contract anymore. I was looking for something else, though I did not know what. Then I found it. A black folder with no name, hidden between a land deal from 2009 and a bank loan from 2013. I pulled it out. The cover read, "Chair Transfer, Morgan and Company. Construction, April 17th. Only 4 months ago." I opened the first page and froze. It said, "Transfer of 72% of Franklin Morgan's shares to Savannah R. Morgan. The rest stayed with Dad and a small part with Mom." My name was not mentioned. Not even once. I read it again. And again. My mind kept saying this must be a mistake. A draft. But it was real. It had stamps, signatures, and legal seals. It was final. There was nothing saying it was temporary. My hands felt cold. My head was spinning. I had to hold onto the shelf to keep from falling. After a moment, I stood up straight again. Then I heard a soft knock. Eleanor stood at the door. "What are you looking for, Danielle?" I turned around. Our eyes met. I saw something in her face, maybe guilt. I held up the paper. "You knew about this, didn't you?" She did not answer right away. She just walked in and closed the door behind her. Then she said quietly, "Your father was going to tell you once things settled down. He thought you would understand." "Understand what?" I almost shouted. "That he gave the whole company to my sister? The one who only just came back? The one who never worked a single hour on a job site?" Eleanor looked at me, her eyes full of sadness. "Danielle, this is not your fault. And it is not fully Savannah's either. Your father thinks the company needs a new direction. He thinks you are stuck in the old ways." "Stuck?" I let out a small, bitter laugh. I called it saving this company through a recession, a pandemic, and fixing mistakes he made. Eleanor stayed quiet. I walked past her quickly, the folder still in my hand. I climbed the stairs so fast I almost fell. I do not even remember the drive home. But when I parked in the garage, I was still holding the folder tight. I sat down in my living room, phone turned off. Outside, the city lights were glowing, but inside, I felt cold. My hands were sweating. My heart hurt in a way I had never felt before. I thought of every time my dad had told me, "This future is yours, Danny." I had believed him. I had given up so much because I trusted his words. But now, it felt like none of that had ever mattered. All I got in return was betrayal. It was signed, stamped, and legal. I held the paper in my hands and wanted to tear it up. But I stopped myself. No, I needed to keep it as proof. Then, a new thought came into my mind. At first, it was small and unclear. But then it became solid. If the company was no longer mine, then it was not my job to keep it going anymore. If they chose Savannah, then let her carry the weight. I stood up, turned on the lights, and opened my laptop not to work, but to plan how I would leave. I did not sleep that night. Every sentence in that document felt like a slow knife cutting through my memories. They had kept this secret for 4 months. For whole months. All the meetings, lunches, and compliments they gave Savannah, those happened while they already knew. And still, they acted like everything was normal. They let me show up every morning at 7 a.m. to clean up after Savannah's messy work. I thought I was still walking toward my future. But the dream had already been taken away from me. And no one said a word. The next morning, I woke up feeling empty. No laptop. No emails. I put on a black shirt and jeans, something I would never wear to work. But that day, I did not care about looking professional. I texted Mom. "I'll come home for dinner tonight." She replied in 5 minutes. "Everyone will be there," she said. "Dad and Savannah too. I'll make your favorite beef stew." Perfect. I arrived at 6 p.m. The red brick house I grew up in still looked the same. But that night, it felt cold. I did not knock. I did not need permission to enter what once felt like home. Mom wore her apron. The air smelled like cardamom from the stew. Dad was reading the newspaper with soft music playing. Savannah was setting the table, dressed neatly like always. "Danielle." Mom smiled and opened her arms to hug me. I let her, but I did not hug back. "Want some wine?" Savannah asked, holding a glass. "No," I said. "I want to be clear-headed tonight." Everyone froze. Dad looked up from the paper. I pulled out a chair and placed the black folder on the table. I opened it. I said nothing. I let them read it. Savannah's eyes stopped on the first line. Mom covered her mouth with her hand. Dad froze completely. "I found this in the archive," I said calmly. "A decision this big and no one thought I should know?" "Danielle," Mom said softly. "Your father was going to tell you when the time was right." "The right time?" I laughed, but it was cold. "So, for months wasn't right? Were you waiting until I was pushed out completely?" Dad placed the paper down. "You are being too emotional." I slammed the folder shut. "Do not talk to me about emotion when you are the one who gave me away on paper." Savannah spoke, more gently. "It is not what you think. You still have an important role." "Important?" I cut her off. "I saved this company during the financial crisis. I fixed contracts. I turned a failing project into a profit in 3 weeks. But the person who got full control is the one who only came back less than a year ago and once called time-off forms freedom with conditions." Silence. Only the stew bubbling in the pot made any sound. "Danielle," Dad said. "Savannah brings new ideas. She's creative. You are too stiff." "I see," I said. "So 10 years of hard work is called being stiff. And her pretty photos of light bulbs and keychains, that's the future?" For the first time, Savannah looked down. She had nothing to say. I stood up, voice calm but firm. "Just one question. Would you have ever told me the truth if I hadn't found that folder?" Silence again. "Thanks," I said. "That is all I needed to know." I picked up the folder and looked each of them in the eye. "This is not a threat. It is a decision. I am no longer working for Morgan and Company." "You cannot," Mom whispered. "You are the heart of the company." No. I looked at my father. I was just a spare part. And now I'm removing myself from the machine. I turned and walked away from the house where it all began. I thought that was the end. But real life is not like a movie. The story does not end when someone walks out the door. 3 days after I emailed my resignation, no explanation, no nice words, I got a call from Eleanor. Her voice was quiet, like she was hiding from someone. Danielle, I think you need to see something. I paused. I do not work there anymore. This is about you, she said. They're about to present the Everpine project. My heart sank. Everpine was the plan I had worked on for 2 years. I showed it to my dad back in February. He said it was too risky and told me to forget it. But I never deleted it. I had saved all the versions, all the ideas, all the plans. That day, I drove to the company feeling like a stranger. My old access card still worked. Eleanor had not removed it. She led me to a meeting room and opened the door just a little. I peeked inside. Savannah was giving a presentation in front of a big screen. She was smiling, holding the remote. The Everpine project focuses on young families in southern Denver. With eco-friendly design and flexible spaces, it will happen in 4 steps over 26 months. I held my breath. It was my plan. Word for word. Slide for slide. Even the mint green background I had chosen. But every slide had one difference. In the corner, it said Savannah R. Morgan, Creative Director. I do not remember how I left. I just know I was shaking when I got home. My hands dropped the keys. I opened my laptop. I still had all the old files. The originals. With my name and the dates. There was no question. My work had been stolen. That night, I called my dad. We need to meet. Not at home. Not at work. Danielle, he said. Tomorrow. 6 p.m. Darrow's Cafe. Be there. If not, I will send everything to Everpine's lawyers. He agreed. The next day at 6 p.m., he walked into the cafe. He looked tense. I pointed to the seat across from me. I said nothing. I opened my laptop. On one side, my original presentation. On the other, Savannah's copy. What do you want? He asked. Who gave her permission to copy my work and say it was hers? He stayed silent. If you say this was teamwork or an accident, I will print every email, every draft, every rejection, and take it to the investors. He sighed. Savannah just added on to what you left behind, he said. No. She copied it. All of it. And you let her. Danielle, it was a strategy. You are good at getting things done. She's good at ideas. I wanted both. You stole from me, I said. Put her name on it and called it strategy. If that's how you want to run Morgan and Company, get ready for court. You will not do that, he said, sure of himself. Won't I? I placed a USB drive on the table. Everything is on here. You have 2 days. After that, I go public. He stared at me for a long time. His eyes, once full of warmth, now looked empty. What do you want? Remove her name from the project. And give me a written apology. You think that's easy? I stood up. Easy or not. You have 2 days. I am not your quiet, hard-working daughter anymore. I walked away, still shaking. But this time, I did not feel small. I felt strong. I was finally stepping out of my father's shadow. I heard nothing for 2 days. No emails. No calls. On the 3rd day, Eleanor sent a message. Everpine just canceled their bid. They want you, the original creator, to confirm the real status. Savannah was panicking. My dad, Mr. Franklin, had not come to work that morning. I sat in my apartment holding my phone, but the screen stayed quiet. For the first time in 10 years, I was no longer tied to the company. But I knew the truth. I had been the one keeping Morgan and Company running. Without me, things would fall apart fast. Everpine was not just a project. It was worth $9 million and had the chance to grow across 3 states. I had worked on it for 2 years. I built trust with the investor, Miss Elaine Irwin. So when she called me at 9:18 that Wednesday morning, I knew this was not a friendly chat. Danielle, she said, her voice calm but colder than usual. Are you still leading the Everpine project? I've resigned, I said. I see, she replied and paused. I also watched the presentation last week. That was your draft, wasn't it? I didn't answer. And Savannah Morgan had nothing to do with it. Not even one line. She was quiet again. Then she said, "We just sent a contract withdrawal notice. I won't sign anything unless you're leading the team." "I understand," I said. "And I'm sorry it came to this." "Don't apologize," she said. "You were the reason we agreed to the deal. Not because of the Morgan name. Because of you, Danielle Morgan." After that call, I let out a breath. Not because I was relieved, but because I knew what was coming. And I was right. That evening, while I was standing in line at the grocery store, my phone rang. It was Mom. "Danielle," she said. Her voice was shaky. "Can you come back?" "No," I said. "We lost Everpine. You know that, right?" "I do. The investor called me herself. Savannah can't handle it. She's falling apart." She was quiet for a moment, then kept talking. "Your father isn't himself. He hasn't said a word all day. And Eleanor says the subcontractors are pulling out because they haven't been paid." I stayed silent. Then she asked, "Are you really going to let it all fall apart like this?" "I'm not letting anything fall," I said. "They did this to themselves. I'm just not cleaning up after them anymore." The subject line said, "Please meet me." The message said, "I can't explain what happened. But I want to talk if you're willing. I don't need you for the company. I just want to understand. I'll come anywhere you choose, I didn't answer right away. That night, while cleaning out a drawer, I found the old company growth plan I wrote when I was 26. Dad had once thrown it in the trash, saying it was useless. I smoothed out the crumpled paper and looked at my old red notes. Then I wrote back to Savannah, tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Maple and Pine Cafe, I didn't know what I would say. But I didn't know one thing: I wasn't going to save Morgan and company again. If it wanted to survive, it had to do it without me. At 8 a.m., I arrived at the cafe. The Denver air was still cool, and the little bell above the door rang when I walked in. It smelled like fresh coffee and warm waffles. Savannah was already sitting at a table near the window. She had her hands wrapped around a cappuccino she hadn't touched. She stood when she saw me, but I just nodded and sat down. "Thanks for coming," she said. I didn't answer. I just placed my phone face down on the table. "You don't have to say anything," she rushed to speak. "I just wanted to admit I was wrong." I raised one eyebrow. I didn't believe her yet. "The Everpine plan wasn't mine," she said. "I know that. I should never have let my name be used. I followed Dad's orders. I was too weak to say no. But now everything's falling apart, and I understand why." I waited. I knew she hadn't brought me here just to apologize. Savannah looked nervous. "Dad's thinking about asking you to come back." "Oh, really?" I said. "Because now he thinks old-fashioned thinking can fix his mess?" "That's not what he meant," she said. "I understand exactly what he meant," I said. "And if he really wanted to talk, the message should have come from him, not you." She looked down, playing with the rim of her coffee cup. I stood up, ready to leave. But she stopped me with one sentence. "Dad said if you agree to return, he'll give you part of his shares." I stopped and looked back. Slowly, I sat down again. "How much?" I asked. He said 15% and a deputy executive title. I laughed. "I'm not coming back to be second to a failed creative director." Then I pulled a notebook from my bag and opened it to a page I had already written. "These are my terms," I said clearly. 40% ownership. A seat on the board. The title of executive director, equal to or higher than yours. And full control over Everpine if it's still fixable. 40%? Savannah looked shocked. "I've run that company for almost 10 years. I saved it from 3 major disasters. You've been back for 11 months. Most of that time, you were picking colors and having long lunches." She said nothing. "If your family wants me to save the company they threw away, then they need to pay the price. I'm not doing free work anymore." She nodded slowly and pulled out her phone. "I'll tell Dad." 2 hours later, I got a call from a number I didn't know. I picked it up. It was my father. His voice was dry but steady. "Danielle, we need to talk." There's nothing to talk about unless there are lawyers and a signed deal, I said firmly. You're taking this too far. No, Dad. I'm just playing by the rules. There was a long pause. Then he said, all right. Tomorrow. 10 a.m. Harold's office. We spoke like two people at a negotiation table. I ended the call and held my phone, not because I was scared, but because, for the first time, I had the upper hand. The next morning, I walked into Harold's office wearing a smoke gray suit. My hair was tied neatly. I carried a file I had spent days preparing. Inside were project reports, revenue growth charts, and letters from 3 major clients. All proving one thing: I was not just an employee. I was the backbone of Morgan and Company. My father was already there, sitting beside Harold, with my mother next to him. Savannah was not there. I preferred it that way. Danielle, Harold began, we've reviewed your terms. I didn't move. Your father has agreed in principle. I nodded. I want it signed today. Otherwise, I have a meeting with West Haven Group at 2 p.m. My father looked at me. It was the first time he had really looked at me since all of this started. You're not joking, he said. I never have, I replied. If you still think I am, then there's nothing more to discuss. He reached out his hand. Let's start over. I looked at it. It used to be the hand that led me. Now it felt like a stranger's. Still, I shook it. Not as a daughter. As a partner. After 1 hour of firm back and forth, we signed the deal. I received 40% of the company, taken from my father's share. I was given a voting seat on the board. Savannah kept 35%. My mother held 25%, but she would no longer be involved in decisions. When I walked out of that office with the signed documents in hand, I did not feel like I was returning to something old. I had created something entirely new. 2 weeks later, I returned to Morgan and Company. But this time, I did not come in quietly. This time, my name was on the brass plaque outside the office. Danielle Morgan, Chief Operating Officer. Co-owner. 40% stake. ****. For the first time in 10 years, I walked into that office without any fear. I did not need to prove myself anymore. I had already done that. Now, it was official. We had to rebuild the company from the inside out. Savannah stayed on as creative director, but only focused on what she was truly good at: branding, marketing, and customer experience. She had no say in money, project decisions, or strategy. That was now my job. I took over the core of the company. Managing resources, overseeing investments, guiding construction plans, and winning back trust from clients. The very first thing I changed was the culture. No more unpaid late nights. I set a clear workweek, 45 hours max. If someone needed more time, it had to be approved. People were no longer machines. They were builders, like me. I changed how we held meetings. No more 3-hour speeches from my dad about real-world experience. From now on, facts and data came first. Gut feelings were for marketing, not operations. Savannah struggled with these changes at first. She did not like rules. She did not know how things worked beneath the surface. But I did not fight with her. I trained her. Every week, we sat down for coffee. I taught her how to read budgets, how to understand technical reports, and how to see risk in a contract. One time, she got frustrated and asked, "Why does everything have to be so complicated?" I smiled. Because that's what kept us alive through 2 recessions. Slowly, she changed. She took notes. She asked better questions. She listened. 1 month later, I got an email from Elaine Irwin, the investor behind Everpine. She wrote, "We're open to renegotiating on one condition. The project must be led by Danielle Morgan, ***. I printed out the email and pinned it on the company bulletin board. At first, the office went silent. Then the applause came. Not just for me, but for all of us. Because we were back. My father stepped down into an advisor role. No more control. He now came in 3 days a week, mostly to read reports and give the occasional opinion. One day, he walked into a meeting and looked completely lost. Everything had changed. He knew it. His time was over. But I didn't push him out. I just gave him boundaries. He could still be my father. But he was no longer my boss. 3 months later, Morgan and Company signed the new Everpine deal. This time, the project was bigger. Worth almost $2 million more. 4 old clients returned. 2 new investors offered to join. I sat in my new office. Not my father's old one, mine. The one I designed. It had tall windows with sunlight, a dark wooden desk, a bookshelf, and a beanbag in the corner where I could read without hurting my back. On the wall was a sketch. The first one I ever made for Everpine. It still had a coffee stain on the corner. Right next to it was a note from Eleanor. Your consistency is what kept everything standing. I look at that note every day. Not everyone will see your worth right away. But if you keep going, one day you will be the one in charge. I am not the forgotten daughter anymore. I am Danielle Morgan. The one who did not wait for power to be given. The one who claimed it. Danielle's story is a reminder for all of us, ***. Your worth does not depend on who praises you. And no one can take your value unless you let them. Sometimes, the greatest power comes when you finally say,